right, man, first off, thanks so much for joining me, dude. I know this was a long ride. You came from LA this morning, and what time did you leave?
4 a.m. I had a lot of caffeine.
That is, I bet you have.
A large, a large Starbucks double shot on ice.
And now it is 2 in the afternoon, so I appreciate it.
I have 2 more days before it'll wear off and I can go to sleep.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect. Well, seriously, thanks for coming up, man.
My pleasure.
Very excited to do this interview with you. Most successful Buildbox game, but even more than that, most successful mobile game color switch since, like, what has beaten color switch in downloads? Let's start there.
Well, Pokemon Go, for sure. But hey, you know what? It's not bad when you're competing with something that's like a 25-year-old franchise.
Yeah.
We just came out last December.
Yeah.
So the fact that that's our only competition.
I mean, Angry Birds, Doodle Jump, maybe? I don't even know.
Well, Angry Birds was a different category. They were a paid game.
Yeah.
They actually had, I don't know how many downloads they've had, but they held the top slot in that area for a long time. But as far as free games, our category, I think the one that held the slot the longest, as far as number 1, was Flappy Bird, but that was 21 days. We were a whole month. So,
wow.
Yeah, nuts. I didn't know that would happen this year.
Yeah.
I thought it could go number 1 when I made it, but I wouldn't have expected this.
Well, I don't think anyone did. That's amazing. So, what I want to talk about in this interview is how you created this game, the surprise, and then we'll get to it in a little bit. But I want to talk about some about the experience of after having this kind of success.
Yeah.
So to start it off, how did you make this game? Actually, we just had the launch, all right? And you told me about a book I've got to get. Maybe you're going to mention that. Hopefully you do, because that was interesting. But tell me how you made this game, the story behind creating this.
Simple. I mean, it was just a repeated pattern, right? My thought process was generating game ideas over and over, building them, and just repeating that, getting a little better at game design, getting a little better at the ideas I was
So it wasn't overnight?
No.
Yeah.
I started designing games back in July of 2013.
Okay.
So over a couple nights, a couple years of nights.
Yeah.
But my whole process was always, in the very beginning, I thought, you know what, I got to study game design, which to me is the artistic side of it. You know, giving depth to a game, not just programming, not learning how to program, but those important design aspects that are in all sorts of art forms.
That's amazing.
So it was that in the book I used. I think your Game Academy website at the time, you mentioned the art of game design. I might have gotten that book from
one of my favorite books. Let's say you got it from me, even if you didn't.
That's the story now. So that, and then the most important book I've ever purchased. And it's the book I use to generate all my ideas for game ideas, and that's Thinkertoys, which it's a book of creative thinking techniques.
And who wrote Thinkertoys?
That's Michael Michalko, who I eventually messaged.
Yeah, I want you to share that story. I love that.
So after Color Switch blew up, I think we were at the point where we had 20 or 30 million downloads. I emailed him and I said, hey, Mr. Michalko, I had this really big success by using and applying your techniques, and I just wanted to say thank you for coming out with the book. And he emailed me back and said, I'm always really happy to hear when someone has a success using these. And I asked him, could I purchase a signed copy? And he said, no, I'll just give you a signed copy. So he sent me a free signed copy in the mail. And then I was telling you this earlier, the inscription he wrote was, Dear David, life isn't about waiting for storms to pass. It's about learning how to dance in the rain, which obviously means there's always problems to solve, and you got to solve them today and not think about what could be in the future. The problems that need to be solved are today, and it's a good thing to solve problems.
My new favorite quote.
Yeah, I love that quote.
That is amazing.
So really cool guy, and I found that book 5 years ago, and just so happened when I got into games, I immediately thought, I could use Thinkertoys techniques to generate my game ideas. Yeah. And I generated hundreds of ideas with those techniques.
Now, do you have a hard time now coming up with game ideas, or is this still just second nature?
It's always,
is it easy for you?
It's, I guess it's more natural now, but I don't know if it gets easier. It's still a process. It's still, like I said, he says in the quote, dance in the rain. It's still raining problems on me, and my problems are, okay, how do I think of another good game? And so it's the same thing. I have to do, it's not like I don't have to put in the work. I still have to put in the work of generating ideas using these techniques and just generate hundreds of ideas until I find one that's the diamond I'm looking for.
Gotcha.
So I think it's always a constant process of producing lumps of coal until you get to that diamond, and that you can't bypass that process, the problem-solving process, which is what these techniques are. They're techniques to help you solve problems.
And the problems you would have in creating a game, are these problems like you don't know what to do next, like writer's block, gamer's block?
No, it's not gamer's block, because when you use these techniques, you're generating idea after idea after idea.
Gotcha.
It's more about, well, with any problem statement, you got to get very specific. So when I was making Color Switch, first the problem statement was, how do I make a hit game?
Yeah.
That's too broad. You got to get more focused, because the more focused you get, the more focused the results you'll generate with these techniques.
Okay.
So if I get really super focused, it's how do I design a game where I tap the screen and a character goes up the screen, right? A simple game that anyone could play. How do I think of a new, better idea in that format? So now I know, okay, I'm going to create a game that's this character that I tap the screen, he goes up the screen, and now all my results are focused on that type of game.
Do you know why you thought to make that type of game? Do you remember that? I know this is a very... Do you remember this small point in time back, 6 months ago?
I do. I remember it's kind of an episodic memory, because I remember the day. Basically what you do is you take all sorts of ideas, you tear them apart using these techniques. Then when you have them all torn apart, there's other techniques to manipulate the pieces. I took, I downloaded all sorts of games that use colors and shapes as the main theme of their game. I tore apart, I'm trying to remember all the ideas I tore apart, but when you log into Gmail, there's a little Google icon that's a color changing ball. Mm-hmm. I had that on my inspiration list.
Yeah. So you wrote these down? You literally wrote these down?
Yeah, I wrote these down. And
hey, what about dot up? Was that one of your
Which
games?
one is that?
This is where a ball kind of goes up and you got to avoid obstacles.
Probably. I bet I did have that one. I looked at Flight.
Yeah.
I looked at, I found all the games I could, even Doodle Jump, Bounce, any game where someone's going up the screen, right?
Okay.
And I tore them all apart, and I thought, what could I do different? And so like when I was tearing all these ideas apart, like let's say Flight, you have a rotating obstacle, and the character goes through the one opening.
Okay.
So I easily
and that's a Buildbox game, right?
I think it is.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, it is. Aren't you the nerd?
Speaking of Buildbox.
So I thought, okay, and it's model improved, like you're saying, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what these techniques do. But I tore apart the...
You've model and improved, by the way, after our lunch, yeah.
I did.
We can talk about that later, but yeah.
But I looked at all these games, the game type of that kind of game, and I thought, what could I do that's better or that's different, that adds on to what's been done? And I thought, well, in all these rotating obstacles, you only have one opening. So using the SCAMPER technique from Thinkertoys,
mm-hmm.
I took the attribute of a rotating obstacle with one opening. I said, what if I added multiple openings?
Okay.
But I thought, okay, well, that's not going to be too interesting if an object's rotating and you can go through many points. So then I had color, right? And I said, what if I add color? So I used the SCAMPER technique again, and I took the A of SCAMPER.
And SCAMPER technique is...
It's an acronym for SCAMP, 7 ways to manipulate an attribute. So S stands for substitute.
You actually know them then.
Yeah.
Right.
C, yeah. That'd be bad. Like, let me look it up.
Don't worry about it.
So A in SCAMPER stands for add.
Okay.
So the attribute of an obstacle with one opening is what I focus on. I said, what can I add to this obstacle? And I said multiple openings. And then I said, what else could I add? And I thought of color. I put color on there. I said, okay, well, what if I had multiple openings, but it's actually each side of this obstacle is a different color? And then I thought of, I think I gradually thought of, well, what if the ball had to go through the same color? And then the color changed. So it's really just kind of like,
wow, that's cool.
When you put these ideas together, the more ideas you have, the more sources of inspiration you have, so that an inspired idea just emerges. And that's what happened. I remember I was sitting there and I was just putting color next to this idea and that idea, and all of a sudden the color switch idea just emerged from my brain.
Wow.
And I just remember thinking about it, like it emerged, and I saw it in my head, and I thought, that seems really interesting. So I spent 20 minutes and I made these graphics for a circle with different pieces that were different colors. And then I put it into Buildbox.
What software did you... Okay, Buildbox.
Yeah. I was right before you. I opened Buildbox. I put all this in, and I was telling you this earlier. I actually just used a preset in Buildbox. I made like 3 or 4 adjustments so that I had the color switch, had the preset the way I needed it for color switch. And in 10 minutes, I had a demo of this circle with different colored sides with the ball going through.
And that was the total goal with the. Hey, I made those presets. Does that mean I?
Yeah. Oh yeah. 50% here.
Yeah, that's right. No, that's so cool. That's the exact reason we put those in there.
Yeah.
Starting points. I was explaining this to you, how we made those. I based it off of synthesizers, where you start with a preset when you buy a synthesizer because they're so hard to figure out,
right?
And then you build your sound off of that, and that's and all jokes aside, we make the presets really simple for a reason, so you can add on and do cool things. That's great. It
just goes to show you don't need a complex idea. I mean, that's why there's clones of my game everywhere. You can build it pretty easily.
Yeah,
it took me 10 minutes.
There you go.
So I can't expect that there aren't going to be any clones of it or people.
Does that bother you, all the different clones?
I mean, from a legal standpoint, we have to stay on top of that. Otherwise, you have nothing, right?
Yeah.
So personally, it was more flattering. It's like, oh, everyone wants to copy me.
That's when you've made it. Yeah.
You're doing something right. But from legal standpoint, my lawyer said, okay, you have to take care of your IP.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're not going to have an IP. So
exactly.
I'm learning all this legal stuff.
Yeah, that's cool,
business stuff.
So speaking of the business stuff, how did you approach Fortify? And Fortify, for those that don't know, is Fortify, and which is Sam is his real name, I believe, right?
Yeah, Sam.
Yeah, and then Zeb, right? They're partners in there.